Beneath it hummed a subtle, almost imperceptible whisper, a chorus of warnings from the roses themselves. Each petal seemed to quiver with unspoken fear and longing, as if the garden remembered every lost soul. Her footsteps took her to the ancient stone altar hidden among thorny vines, a relic from a time long forgotten yet central to the curse's power. There, Rowan appeared, his presence as steady and reassuring as the earth beneath their feet. He looked at her with eyes that held storms and secret pain, his auburn hair tousled by the gentle evening breeze. "You shouldn't be here alone," he murmured, his voice low and earnest. Elara met his gaze, her own conflicted but resolute. "I have to know what this curse wants from us, what it takes." Rowan stepped closer, the weight of his family's legacy pressing between them. "It demands sacrifice. Not just any sacrifice, but one that tests the depths of love and courage." Their hands brushed, a spark of warmth amid the chilling knowledge. In that moment, beneath the blooming roses glowing faintly in the moonlight, their shared fear and hope entwined, binding them in a fragile promise to face the darkness together. But as the night deepened, so did the shadows around them. Whispers carried on the wind, warning of dangers yet to come, and Elara knew the path ahead was fraught with peril. Could love truly conquer a curse born of betrayal and blood? Or was she destined to become another whisper among the thorns? The garden watched silently, its roses blooming with unnatural intensity, as Elara made her choice, one that would test her heart and soul beyond anything she had ever imagined. The greenhouse was cloaked in a soft twilight glow, shadows stretched long over the rows of roses that stood like silent sentinels. Alara's breath caught in her throat as Rowan's voice broke the heavy silence, each word steeped in a painful history he had guarded for so long. "You deserve to know the truth," Rowan began, his piercing blue eyes locking with hers, unwavering despite the weight of what he was about to reveal. "The curse that haunts this garden isn't just a myth or a warning told to scare children away. It's the legacy of my family, born from a betrayal so deep it stained the soil itself." Alara's fingers tightened around her notebook, the pages fluttering as if eager to capture every fragment of his confession. "Tell me," she whispered, the scientist in her wrestling with the dread blossoming in her chest. Rowan inhaled sharply, the scent of damp earth and blooming petals mingling with the rawness in his voice. "Centuries ago, the original gardener fell in love with a witch, a woman whose magic was entwined with the floral world. Their love was fierce but forbidden, a secret whispered only by the roses. When betrayal shattered their bond, the witch cursed the garden, binding it with a dark magic that would claim every lover who walked its paths come summer's bloom." The story unfolded like a tapestry woven with threads of love, pain, and vengeance. Each lover lost was a sacrifice to the curse's insatiable hunger, a cruel price paid to protect the garden from further betrayal. Rowan's ancestors had tried to contain it, but the curse was relentless, a living thing fed by the passion and despair of those ensnared. Alara's heart pounded, the rational part of her mind struggling against the undeniable truth laid bare. The roses outside seemed to lean closer, their crimson petals glowing faintly in the fading light, as if alive with secrets. A soft rustle interrupted their reverie. Mara stepped into the greenhouse, her silver hair catching the last rays of sunlight. Her eyes, deep pools of wisdom and sorrow, met Elara's with a knowing look. "The curse demands a sacrifice," Mara said gently, her voice steady yet mournful. "It's not just a story. It's a bond sealed by blood and grief. Every summer, when the roses bloom fullest, the curse awakens, and lovers vanish, pulled into the garden's shadow." Elara swallowed hard, the pieces falling into place with painful clarity. The whispers she had dismissed, the warnings from villagers, the strange occurrences in the garden, none were coincidence. She reached out, her fingers brushing a single rose petal. It was soft, yet vibrant, the crimson hue pulsing faintly like a heartbeat under her touch. It was as if the rose carried the very essence of the curse, beautiful and deadly entwined. Outside, a sudden breeze swept through the garden, sending petals swirling in an ethereal dance around them. The air was thick with scent, and something darker, an unspoken warning, carried on the wind. Rowan's confession hung heavily between them, a fragile thread binding their fates. "Love here," Rowan said, voice barely above a whisper, "is a risk. To be with me with this garden means risking vanishing like those before us." Alara's mind raced, torn between the pull of her feelings and the harsh reality of the curse. The garden's beauty was a veil for its deadly legacy, and their love was caught in the eye of a storm as old as the roses themselves. She looked into Rowan's eyes, searching for answers, for hope. But all she found was the weight of centuries pressing down on them both. The night deepened, and with it, the garden seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the choice. Alara would make a choice that would decide not only their love, but the fate of every soul bound to Ravenwood's rose-laden paths. "I don't know how to fight something like this," Alara said finally, voice trembling with a mix of fear and determination. Rowan reached for her hand, his touch warm amid the chill of the encroaching night. "Then we fight it together. Because if love is our curse, then maybe it can be our salvation too." The roses bloomed around them, brilliant and ominous, their petals whispering secrets of sacrifice and hope as the garden waited for the next chapter of its haunting tale to unfold. The sky hung low and heavy over Ravenwood, bruised with the fading light of dusk as Alara stepped onto the winding path that led to the garden's heart. The roses were at their fullest bloom now, petals unfurling with an almost unnatural vibrancy that tinged the air with a heavy, intoxicating scent. It was a perfume both beautiful and suffocating, wrapping around her like a silken shroud, whispering secrets she was only beginning to understand. Rowan was already there, standing still among the thorns and blooms, his sharp blue eyes tracing the horizon as if searching for something unseen. His auburn hair was tousled by the evening breeze, and the earth-toned clothes he wore clung to his strong frame, grounding him to the soil he tended. When he spotted her, a faint smile softened his usually guarded expression. "You came," he said, voice low but steady. "I wasn't sure you would." Alara swallowed, the weight of the moment pressing down on her. "I had to. I can't run from this, not anymore." Around them, the garden seemed to breathe, the roses pulsing with a dark energy that both fascinated and frightened her. Every petal shimmered with a deadly allure, the vibrant reds and pinks deepening into shadows at their edges, as if the flowers themselves bore the curse's mark. The legend that had haunted Ravenwood for centuries was no mere story, it was a living, breathing force, and it was awakening. Rowan stepped closer, the scent of earth and rose mingling with the warmth radiating from his skin. "The curse grows stronger each day," he murmured. "I've felt it clawing at the edges of the garden, at my family, at you. But we won't face it alone." Alara's heart quickened, a mixture of fear and hope. They both knew the stakes. The curse demanded a sacrifice, an ancient, terrible payment for a love once betrayed. And yet Rowan's unwavering presence gave her strength. Later that evening, in the small, cozy cottage that Mara called home, the air was thick with candlelight and the scent of herbs. Mara's silver hair caught the flickering flames as she unfolded dusty, ancient texts across the wooden table. Her hands trembled slightly, not from age, but from the urgency of what she revealed. "The ritual," Mara explained, voice barely above a whisper, "is our only hope. It requires a sacrifice, yes, but also a bond forged in love and courage. The garden will fight, but you must stand together." Alara's fingers traced the faded script, her mind racing. Science and logic warred with the undeniable magic woven through the words. Could she really trust this? Could she believe that love would be their weapon? Outside, the garden throbbed with latent power. The roses seemed to pulse, their colors shifting subtly in the candlelight that spilled through the window, casting fluttering shadows on the walls. Nathan's arrival the next day shattered the fragile calm. His face was tight with worry as he confronted Alara in the garden's edge, the tension between them crackling like static. "You have to leave," he urged, voice strained. This curse, it's not something you can fight. I've seen what it does. You're risking everything your life. Alara met his gaze, fierce and unwavering. I'm not running, Nathan, not this time. Frustration and fear warred in Nathan's eyes, but he nodded, knowing she had made her choice. As twilight descended once more, Alara found herself back in the garden's center, Rowan by her side. The roses glowed faintly, almost as if responding to their shared resolve. He reached for her hands, their fingers intertwining with a quiet strength. Whatever comes, Rowan said, we face it together. The garden's shadows deepened, but so did their resolve. In the crossroads of fate, love and sacrifice would be their guide. The night settled over Ravenwood, thick with promise and peril, and as the last light faded from the sky, Alara knew the choice she had made would change everything, either breaking the curse or binding them forever to the garden's dark legacy. But for now, there was only the moment heavy with rose-scented air, whispered vows, and the steady beat of two hearts daring to defy destiny. The path ahead was uncertain, but Alara was no longer alone, and that made all the difference. The garden had never seemed so alive or so menacing. As Alara stepped cautiously through the wending paths flanked by roses that bloomed with unnatural vigor, the air thickened, charged with an energy she could neither explain nor ignore. The sun fought to pierce through the heavy canopy, but shadows clung to the petals and thorns like dark stains. Rowan followed close behind, his usual calm replaced by a taut alertness that made Alara's heart pound in sympathy. A sudden gust swept through the garden, rustling leaves, and sending a cascade of rose petals swirling around them like spectral dancers. The petals glittered momentarily in the sunlight before settling eerily on the ground, as if the garden itself breathed with a sinister pulse. Alara's sharp green eyes scanned their surroundings, catching movement in the corner of her vision, a shadow darting just beyond the tree line. She swallowed hard, the stories of vanished lovers no longer feeling like distant folklore, but a dark reality pressing down on her. The curse is waking, Rowan murmured, his voice low and steady, yet edged with urgency. It's growing stronger. Alara nodded, fighting the instinct to flee. Instead, she clenched her fists, reminding herself why she had come here, to understand, to protect, to fight. The garden was a beautiful prison, and the key to its chains lay hidden somewhere in the ancient lore Rowan had begun to share. But knowledge alone wouldn't be enough. That evening, they found themselves in Mara's cottage, a sanctuary of warmth and wisdom against the encroaching darkness. The room was dimly lit by flickering candles, their soft glow dancing across shelves lined with jars of herbs, dried flowers, and weathered books. Mara sat at the wooden table, spreading out fragile scrolls covered in faded script and ancient symbols. "This is what we must do," Mara explained, her silver hair catching the light as she pointed to a passage describing a ritual to contain the curse's power. But it requires more than words. It demands strength of body, mind, and heart. Alara traced the symbols with trembling fingers, feeling the weight of the garden's history press upon her. Rowan leaned in, his piercing blue eyes fixed on the text, determination hardening his features. "We don't have much time," Rowan said. "With each day the roses bloom fuller, the curse tightens its grip. We must prepare." Back in the garden, twilight brought no relief. The fading light cast long, shifting shadows that seemed to wreathe among the bushes. Alara heard it then, a faint, haunting melody carried on the breeze, the echo of a lover's lament lost to time. Goosebumps rose on her arms as the garden whispered its sorrow and rage. "Do you hear that?" she whispered. Rowan nodded, his jaw clenched. "It's a warning." They moved quickly, Rowan tending to a rose bush battered by a sudden frost that left its leaves blackened and brittle. Alaric knelt beside him, placing a charm Mara had given her into the soil. The earth seemed to pulse beneath her hands, fragile yet alive. "This garden," Rowan said quietly, "is both our prison and our battleground." Alara looked up at him, her green eyes reflecting the last light of dusk. "Then we fight. Together." The night deepened, wrapping Ravenwood in a cloak of silence and shadow. Somewhere deep within the garden's heart, the curse stirred, sensing the defiance blossoming against it. But for the first time, Alara and Rowan felt a fragile hope, a promise that even in the darkest bloom, light could take root. As they prepared for the trials ahead, neither could guess the full cost that breaking the curse would demand, or the sacrifices they would have to make to save the garden and each other. The shadows lengthened, but so did their resolve. The final confrontation was drawing near, and with it, the hope that the garden's deadly cycle might finally be broken. Yet lurking just beyond the edge of the light, danger waited, relentless, patient, and hungry. Alara tightened her grip on Rowan's hand, a silent vow passing between them. Whatever came next, they would face it side by side, hearts intertwined amid the shadows in the bloom. Alara sat cross-legged on the worn wooden floor of Mara's cottage, the flickering candlelight casting long shadows against the walls lined with jars of dried herbs and ancient tomes. The air was thick with the scent of lavender and sage, mingling with the faint musk of old paper. Her fingers trembled slightly as she traced the faded script on a brittle page, the words revealing a truth more harrowing than she had dared imagine. The curse, Mara began gently, her silver hair cascading over her shoulders like a waterfall of moonlight, is not simply a spell to be undone with herbs or rituals alone. It demands a sacrifice, one that reaches beyond the physical. It requires the surrender of something deeply personal, a piece of the soul itself. Alara's breath caught in her throat. She looked up, her sharp green eyes wide with a mixture of disbelief and dawning understanding, a soul's sacrifice. But what does that mean? Mara's gaze softened, the lines on her face telling stories of pain and wisdom. It manifests differently for each who attempts to break it. For some, it is a loss of memory, others, a part of their essence forever bound to the garden. The original curse was born of heartbreak and betrayal. Its undoing must echo the depth of that pain. The weight of Mara's words settled over Alara like a heavy fog. She thought of the childhood friend she had lost, the unexplained disappearance that had haunted her every step. The garden's roses, now in full bloom, seemed to pulse with a sinister life, their vibrant petals hiding a darkness that could consume her. Later that evening, under the twilight sky where shadows danced among the roses, Rowan joined her near the ancient stone altar hidden deep within the garden's heart. His messy auburn hair was tousled by the gentle breeze, and his piercing blue eyes held a storm of emotions. "I've carried this burden alone for too long," he confessed, his voice low and strained. "My mother vanished to this curse, and I've lived every day haunted by the fear that I'll lose you the same way." Alara reached out, her hand finding his, their fingers intertwining amid the thorny branches. "We're in this together," she whispered, though the tremor in her voice betrayed the fear gnawing at her. The garden seemed to respond, the roses around them glowing with an unnatural light, their scent intoxicating yet ominous. The air was thick with the promise of danger and the fragile hope that love might yet prevail. Days passed with restless nights and whispered plans. Alara found herself wandering alone beneath the rain-soaked roses, droplets cascading down her cheeks, indistinguishable from tears. Memories of loss surged through her, the vanished friend, the empty spaces left behind. The burden of sacrifice was no longer abstract. It was an imminent reality that demanded courage she wasn't sure she possessed. As the day of the ritual approached, Mara's warnings echoed in her mind. "Be prepared to give all, Alara. The garden will claim what it needs, and only with true surrender can the cycle be broken." In the final moments before the ritual, Alara and Rowan stood side by side at the altar. Their hands were clasped tightly, hearts pounding in unison. The garden around them held its breath, the roses glowing with a sinister yet beautiful light. "Whatever happens," Rowan said, his voice steady despite the shadows in his eyes, "we face it together." Alara nodded, drawing strength from his presence. "For love, we will pay any price." As they began the incantations, a wind stirred the petals, and the garden seemed to awaken with a fierce energy. The price of love was about to be paid, and the fate of Ravenwood hung in the balance. On the brink of the ritual, with Alara and Rowan's intertwined hopes and fears setting the stage for a confrontation that will test the limits of their love and sacrifice. The air was thick with a heavy silence as Alara followed Mara deeper into the heart of the Ravenwood rose garden. The sun was dipping below the horizon, casting a bruised purple light over the tangled branches and thorny vines. Each step Alara took stirred the scent of crushed petals and damp earth, a fragrance both intoxicating and ominous. Rowan walked beside her, his usual guarded expression softened by the flickering light and the weight of the moment. "This is where it all began," Mara whispered, her voice a fragile thread weaving through the stillness. "The heart of the curse." Alara's fingers brushed against the curled edge of a dark crimson rose, its petals thicker and more velvety than any she had ever studied. But beneath their beauty lurked a sinister pulse, an almost imperceptible tremor that sent a shiver racing through her skin. "Are we ready?" Rowan asked quietly, his voice low but steady, his piercing blue eyes locked onto hers, reflecting the fading light and a storm of emotions beneath. Alara nodded, swallowing the knot of fear tightening in her throat. "We have to be, for everyone who vanished here before us, for the chance to end this nightmare." Mara arranged a circle of herbs and ancient stones carefully around them, each element humming with a quiet power. She began to chant, the words lilting and strange, a melody that seemed to awaken the very soil beneath their feet. Rowan took Alara's hand, grounding her with his warmth. The garden responded almost immediately. The roses trembled, petals quivering as if caught in an invisible wind. A sudden gust whipped through the clearing, carrying a chorus of whispers that sounded like forgotten voices pleading and warning. Alara's heart pounded as shadows stretched and twisted among the vines. The roses darkened rapidly, their vibrant reds bleeding into deep purples and blacks. Thorns lengthened and sharpened, scraping the air with a metallic rasp. "It's fighting us," Rowan growled, tightening his grip on Alara's hand. "The curse doesn't want to end." She swallowed her fear, recalling every lesson she had learned, every note she'd taken about the garden's history and magic. Closing her eyes, she focused on the warmth of Rowan's hand, on the promise they shared. Then, opening her palm, she revealed the sacred herb Mara had given her, a fragment of ancient hope. Together, Alara said firmly, beginning to chant the incantation Mara had taught them. Her voice wavered at first, but grew stronger, weaving through the chaos like a lifeline. The garden seemed to scream in response. Thorns lashed out, vines writhed, and the earth itself trembled beneath their feet. But Rowan's steady presence bolstered her resolve. He stepped forward, placing a protective hand over the circle, his own voice joining hers in the ancient words. Time blurred as the ritual reached its fevered peak. The roses exploded in a burst of blinding light, petals scattering like embers caught in a storm. The darkness recoiled, retreating into the soil and shadows. When the light faded, the garden was still. The roses, once twisted and sinister, now glimmered faintly with a soft, hopeful glow. Alara gasped, breathless. Rowan's eyes shone with unshed tears and fierce triumph. Mara smiled gently, her eyes reflecting the stars beginning to pierce the night sky. "The cycle has begun to break," she murmured. "But the cost is not yet fully known." Alara met Rowan's gaze, their bond fortified by pain and hope. The fight was far from over, but for the first time in centuries, the garden's curse was no longer an unyielding prison. "We'll face whatever comes," Rowan said, voice thick with emotion. "Together." And as the roses whispered their ancient secrets into the night, Alara knew that love, fragile, rebellious love, was their strongest weapon against the darkness. But deep beneath the soil, the curse stirred, unwilling to surrender without a final, terrible reckoning. The night held its breath, waiting. The battle for Ravenwood was only just beginning. The evening air hung heavy over Ravenwood, thick with the scent of roses and an unspoken tension that clung to every petal and thorn. Alara's boots crunched softly on the gravel path winding through the garden, eyes scanning the darkening foliage with growing unease. The sun had long dipped below the horizon, casting the estate into a dim twilight that seemed to amplify every whisper of the wind and every rustle of leaves. Rowan had been restless all day, his usual calm shattered by an inexplicable dread she felt creeping into her own bones. Leela's been missing for hours. Rowan's voice broke through the silence as he approached, his piercing blue eyes shadowed by worry. I searched every corner of the garden and the nearby woods. There's no sign of her. Alara's heart clenched. It was impossible to believe that the curse had taken someone so young, so innocent. The garden had claimed lovers before, but a child. The thought was too cruel to grasp. Together, they began a desperate search under the fading light. Alara's sharp green eyes caught a flash of color, something red caught in the thorns near the old fountain. She moved closer, heart pounding, and saw it was Leela's scarf, frayed and stained with dirt. The realization hit like a cold wave. The curse was no longer just a legend or a threat to lovers. It was a relentless force, hungry and merciless. Rowan's hands trembled as he reached out to touch the scarf. She was here, he murmured, voice thick with anguish. I should have protected her. Alara placed a steadying hand on his arm. We'll find her. We have to. The garden, once a place of delicate beauty, now felt like a labyrinth of shadows. The roses, illuminated faintly by the moonlight, seemed to pulse with a sinister life of their own. Their vibrant reds darkened to almost black, petals curling as if in silent agony. The air was thick with the heavy perfume of death and magic intertwined. As they scoured the garden, a soft voice called out from the edge of the grove. Mara appeared, her silver hair catching the moonlight, her expression grave. I feared this night would come, she said quietly, stepping closer. The curse demands a sacrifice, and it grows stronger with each bloom. Alara's breath caught. Is there no way to stop it, to bring Lila back? Mara's eyes, wise and burdened, met hers. The sacrifice is the price for the curse's power. If we do not break the cycle, more will vanish. The weight of Mara's words settled over them like a shroud. Alara felt the sting of tears and the fierce, atching pull of helplessness. Yet beneath the despair, a fierce determination took root. If the curse could claim Leela, it could claim Rowan, or her. They had to fight to find the strength to break free. Night deepened, and the garden seemed to close in around Alara as she stood in the heart of the rose labyrinth. The roses glowed faintly, their petals shifting through ominous hues, deep crimson to midnight black, as if alive with the curse's dark magic. The wind whispered secrets, voices almost audible among the thorns. Her fingers brushed the rough bark of a rosebush, grounding herself in the moment, fighting the rising tide of fear. We will end this, she whispered into the night air, not just to the garden, but to herself and to Rowan, wherever he was. We will bring her back. But the garden held its silence, the final petal hanging heavy in the dark, a silent challenge to their courage and love. Outside the garden walls, the village slept uneasily, unaware of the darkness blooming once more within Ravenwood. The curse's grip tightened, and the dance of love and loss spun ever onward, with Alara and Rowan caught in its merciless embrace. The night was far from over, and the true test of their hearts was only just beginning. The heart of Ravenwood's garden was unlike anything Alara had ever seen. As twilight descended, the roses surrounding her shifted in hue from their usual vibrant reds and pinks to shades that seemed almost otherworldly, deep crimsons darkening to black, then fading into ghostly whites. The air was thick with an eerie stillness, broken only by the soft rustle of petals and the faintest whispers carried on a chilling breeze. It was as if the garden itself was breathing, holding its breath in anticipation. Alara's pulse quickened, every instinct screaming both caution and curiosity. She clutched the small bundle of herbs Mara had given her, a talisman against the curse, but it felt fragile, almost insignificant here. The stories she had heard from the villagers, the warnings from Nathan, even the secrets Rowan had reluctantly shared, all led to this moment. The confrontation with the source of the curse. A flicker of movement caught her eye amid